Psalm 143. Hear my prayer, O Yahweh. Give ear to my supplications. Answer me in your faithfulness, in your righteousness, and do not enter into judgment with your servant. For in your sight no man living is righteous. For the enemy has persecuted my soul. He has crushed my life to the ground. He has made me dwell in dark places like those who have long been dead. Therefore my spirit is overwhelmed within me. My heart is appalled within me. I remember the days of old. I meditate on all your doings. I muse on the work of your hands. I stretch out my hands to you. My soul longs for you as a parched land. Answer me quickly, O Yahweh. My spirit fails. Do not hide your face from me, or I will become like those who go down to the pit. Let me hear your loving kindness in the morning, for I trust in you. Teach me the way in which I should walk. For to you I lift up my soul. Deliver me, O Yahweh, from my enemies. I take refuge in you. Teach me to do your will, for you are my God. Let your good spirit lead me on level ground. For the sake of your name, O Yahweh, revive me. In your righteousness, bring my soul out of trouble. And in your loving kindness, cut off my enemies and destroy all those who afflict my soul. For I am your servant. So again here, as we've seen a few times now in the past, and especially recently, I think 2 weeks ago, we see that he's praying for his prayers, right? Verse 1, hear my prayer, O Yahweh, give ear to my supplications. He does this a lot. He prays that his prayers would be effective. Seems a little bit weird, maybe a little bit circular in its reasoning, but in a relationship with God, you get to do this kind of stuff, right? And so he does a lot of that. God, pay attention to my prayers. And then you can pray that in faith because you know he's going to. But sometimes that prayer is more for us than for God. We do have those little inklings. Is he really listening? Is he really hearing? And so you pray about it, and then you can just leave it with him. But he teaches us here something very valuable about how to suffer, right? And there's a lot of blessing when we do this. Verse 5, I remember the days of old. I meditate on all your doings. I muse on the work of your hands. What he's saying there is when he's in the moment of suffering, when he's in the moment of being persecuted by people or whatever it is, he thinks back to what God has done. Now, this is David, who was living out a lot of the Bible. So when he thinks about his own life, he really is thinking about the work of God. If we do this, it's a little bit more precarious because, we could think back on our own lives, but then we may end up just appealing to experience. And we don't want that to be, our go-to move in the time of pressure. But he's thinking essentially about the salvation history of the Lord. And that's where he goes in the time of trouble. This is a brilliant move. If you're looking for a strategy on how to get through tough times, if you're looking for a strategy on Christian suffering, boom, this is it. What he does is in his suffering, he thinks about what God has already done. For us, we got it written down, right? So we think about the word of God. We turn this over in our head. And there's a really cool thing that happens here. I mean, there's a lot of them, but one of the undervalued benefits of spending more time in the word of God when you're suffering, spending more time in the word of God when the pressure is on, one of the hidden benefits of that is that wherever you go in those times, you form an emotional bond with. It's like this visceral gut level comfort that you will always have when you go back to that place. So when guys go to war together, they have the battle bond. When people go through traumatic experiences together, they have a trauma bond. And it's been called various things, but you can say things to each other, say very few words or not say anything, and the other person will just kind of get it because they've been there with you. They spilled the same blood in the same mud, and their scars match yours, and you just kind of get it. And so when we're getting scarred up, when we're getting beat up in life, whatever that may be, a health thing, a relational thing, a financial thing, a spiritual thing, all these things that we got to deal with, when we intentionally go back and press into the Word of God, spending more time with more intensity and deeper study, more careful reading, and we do that with the Word of God when we're hurting, then in times in life when we're not hurting so much, in times in life when things go back to normal, then we have that, this is a weird way to say it, but we have that trauma bond with God and with His Word, where it's just like He is our comfort zone. And that's where you get Christians saying things like, do you have any idea what the Lord and I have been through together? Right? And you hear that a lot when you talk about Christian suffering. Like, He has seen me through this and this and this. That's what was happening there. They pressed into the Word of God. They pressed into prayer, and they did all of this with faith. And when you do that in the middle of the fire, then when you come out the other side of the fire, that bond stays just that strong. It's like there's a welding together that happens of our heart with the Word of God. So if you're suffering, right? If you're suffering, we know from last week that we can suffer well and pray the promises of God for the future and trust those, right? Because in the gospel, He's given us all things eternally. We just don't get to see it all right now. So we can pray with an eye towards the good future that God has purchased for us on the cross. And in the middle of it, press into the Word of God and press into prayer. Extra time, extra intensity, extra, faith, if you can muster it, to pour into the Word of God. And that is a massively blessed pathway through suffering.